Hello, today we have Matt Jones here, who is our wonderful farrier right here in Cedar Grove. He's been with us since 2016 when we first opened and incorporated as a nonprofit. He's been awesome in taking care of our program horses. He's had plenty of experience with all the different breeds that we have, and he's going to talk to you a little bit today about what he does and how he got started in the farrier business. So Matt, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your introduction to horses?
Sure. I'm Matt Jones, and I've been shoeing horses since 1994, so that's about 25 years. Got into horses before I started shoeing them. I was riding and I owned horses and did other things. Worked on a ranch for a while, breaking colts, rodeoed for a while, so I had a lot of experience with horses before I started shoeing. And I moved to Wisconsin one year in the off season and was looking for a job, and a local horseshoer had an ad in the paper, was looking for an apprentice. I thought that would be a great way to learn how to do my own horses, and I ended up doing everyone else's. So I apprenticed there's two ways you can really shoe horses. You can either go to a shoeing school or you can apprentice, and I apprenticed for 8 years.
Okay.
And that's how I learned my trade.
Who was one of your mentors or your teachers during this time? And I guess what were some of the things that he taught you about your work? And I don't know, tell us a little bit about that experience.
The man I worked for, his name was Red Wrenchen. He's unfortunately passed on now, but I worked for him for 8 years, and he has been inducted into the International Horseshoers Hall of Fame. He was a very good person to learn from. Anyone can learn how to trim a horse and put a shoe on, but when you start getting into corrective farriery is where it can be very difficult, and you really have to know what you're doing. And he did a lot of that, worked with a lot of veterinary clinics around here. So I actually got a lot of experience doing things that a lot of people can't do.
All right, that's
doing
wonderful.
corrective type work.
Very cool. Can you talk to us a little bit about the types of horses that you have shod and trimmed in the past, and I don't know, maybe some of the barns that you continue to work for in addition to Heaven's Gate Ranch?
Oh, in 25 years, I've done almost everything. I've worked on everything from minis to draft horses. My main business is hunter jumpers. That's the core of my business, but I do trail horses, just backyard people's horses. I do dressage horses. I've done barrel horses, roping horses. But the only thing I really have never gotten into would be shoeing on the racetrack.
All right.
Shoeing, they call it long-footed shoeing. It's for saddlebreds and a particular way that they have to move. That's kind of a specialty. I've never gotten into that, but I've done just about everything else.
All right. So I know that you travel pretty far to some larger barns and boarding facilities. What made you interested in taking our barn on your workload?
Well, to be honest, first, before I knew what you were when you first called me, is just the proximity. It's nice to have work close to home. It makes for a nice, easy day. You don't have so much traveling, don't spend so much on fuel. But once I learned what you do, I really believe in how you help people, especially veterans, and for that reason is the main reason why I keep coming back here.
Awesome. Well, we definitely appreciate it. So today we have Ember in the cross ties here, and Ember was our first horse that we had on site, and so he's been the one horse that you've been trimming the longest here, and he is clearly very affectionate to you. So we are going to ask you to show us a demo of exactly what you do. If you can show us maybe the parts of Ember's hoof and explain to us the importance of trimming their feet, maybe why they need trims, and talk to us a little bit about how their feet really affect the rest of their health. So, I don't know, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I guess the first thing is there's a saying in the horse world, no hoof, no horse. Everything starts at the hoof. If their hoof is wrong, everything else is wrong. And the reason we need to trim them is, in the wild, horses don't have the life expectancy that they do in a barn. A lot of horses in the wild live to 5-6 years old and then they die. They're covering ground constantly. They're covering different types of terrain, sandy terrain, rocky terrain. So their feet grow and wear down at an appropriate level to keep them sound and to keep them mobile. when we take horses and we put them in a muddy lot or in a stall, they're not wearing their hoof down, they're growing it. So we have to trim that and take off the excess. You can run into problems like abscesses, you can run into problems like thrush with the frog if you don't keep the foot trimmed properly. You can also run into problems that horses get so long they start to stumble and they can't move properly. There are many reasons to keep the horse's hoof trimmed. Another reason is to keep it trimmed level to the bony column so that they don't have joint issues.
Sure. Yeah. So Ember's feet, let's see, I'm trying to think the last time that you were out here to trim them. It would have been probably 8 weeks. Okay. So
yeah, we usually go 8 weeks in the winter because it's like a human fingernail. The hoof growth isn't quite as much in the winter time. And then come spring and through the summer, they grow a lot more hoofs, so we have to start trimming them more often. So we usually do them at 6 weeks in the summer.
All right, so I'm going to zoom in on Ember's feet right now, and can you talk to us a little bit about the shape of it right now, what it currently looks like, and what you're going to do to trim them down. So again, this is 8 weeks for Ember, and this is what his hoof looks like. They kind of flare out a little bit. They're not too terrible, but I think that it'll be nice to clean them up. So let's have you, can you start with one of his front feet? Is
Sure.
that okay?
Come around the back side.
Sure. All right. So we'll come around his backside, keeping a nice distance here. And
All right. This is a very nice horse. You reach down to pick up the foot, and the horse will pick up its foot for you. And the first thing that we do is we take our hoof pick, and we pick the mud out so that we can see what we're doing. This time of year, this is the biggest part of the job.
he's picking them out.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, then the next thing I do is this is the frog, this V-shaped. Why it's called a frog, I have no idea, but that's what it's called. And there are a couple reasons to trim this. The first is to get the excess growth off because it's shaped like a wedge. So theoretically, the mud and the dirt as they walk pushes out the back. So you want to keep it good and clean so that it can function properly. There's another school of thought that the frog acts like a pump, and as a horse steps down, it pumps blood in and out of the foot. So you want to keep it healthy. And then the other reason is to, especially when we have really muddy weather like this, they can get what's called thrush, which is a bacterial infection. So the cleaner we keep the frog, the better off we are.
All right.
And then the frog is one of the indicators of how much sole depth you have, which this is the sole here. And what will happen on a horse's foot is, I'll show you as I trim it here, it's kind of flaky and white underneath. That's exfoliating sole. That naturally will fall off sometimes, and sometimes we have to take it off with a knife. And then when you trim the frog, it gives you a good idea of how much sole depth you have, so you don't take the horse too short and make him sore.
All right, so we do have some of our participants that they clean the hooves themselves, and we tell them to be very careful and sensitive around the frog so that they're not digging into it. Why would you recommend that a farrier really does the frog trimming?
I suppose it's like any other job. I've got experience doing it. I know how far I can go with it before. If you go too deep in the soft tissue, it will bleed.
Okay.
And it will bleed. This is very vascular, and it will bleed quite profusely.
All right.
So you're best off having some experience before you start doing anything on the foot.
Sure. All right. So Ember, to tell you a little bit about his breed, so he is a Rocky Mountain gelding, and he is pretty much bred for long distance trail riding. He has pretty sound feet. He's been in good, healthy condition really since we got him, so we've been lucky to have him that way. And he has never been shod here, so he's never had shoes, and Matt's really been the one who's been trimming him and taking very good care of his feet. So Matt now has his hoof.
This is my nippers.
Okay.
And the next thing I'll do is I'll start at the heel. I I nip off the excess hoof. It's pretty important to know what you're doing, is if you leave too much, they can be kind of stumbly. If you take too much, they can actually get sore. So then I'll go to the other side. Do the same thing. You know, if you watch different guys trim, some guys will go heel to heel, some guys will start at the toe. I was just always taught to start one heel, go to the toe and go to the next. That's just kind of how I do it. But there are definitely other ways to do it. And then what I do is I check for medial lateral balance.
All right, so what does that mean?
Medial, the easiest way to remember it is medial is middle.
Okay.
So the medial side of the foot is the middle, towards the middle of the body.
Okay.
And the lateral side is the outside.
All right.
And what you want to do inside this foot, there are bones. So when they put their foot down, you want those bones to sit parallel with the ground.
Sure. Okay.
So what you do is you want to check for the balance so that you make sure the foot is basically even.
All right.
So then after I nip it, I'll take my rasp, and this just gets everything nice and even and level and smooth. And again, when I'm done rasping, I'll check the balance. And then I take my rasp at a 45-degree angle, and I rasp the hoof wall like this. And in a few minutes, you'll see why. This is to put a finish on the hoof. If you want to leave any sharp, jagged edges,
Okay.
that will catch on stones or anything like that, or when someone's picking up the foot to pick it out, you don't want them to get cut by the edge of the hoof wall. So if you go at a 45-degree angle like that, then once you're done, follow me up front here.
All right. So what do you have here?
From the front, what we'll do is we'll pull the foot up on the hoof stand, and we'll take off any flares, which a flare is, as the hoof wall comes down, sometimes at the bottom it will flare out like that.
Okay.
And that becomes a very weak part of the hoof wall, and it will break off if the ground gets really hard. So, what I generally do is just come forward. And usually you only want to pretty much hit usually only the bottom half of the foot that flares. And I'll take my rasp at a 45-degree angle, and then I'll come around and just make a nice, smooth, rounded edge. Go to the medial side and I'll do the same thing.
We always love it when you come because you can finally see Ember's nice feet.
He'll look good until he goes back outside.
Exactly.
And that's a front foot.
All right. That looks perfect. So Ember right now, he's getting ready for his hind foot. He's basically offering it to Matt, which is pretty nice. It's great that he knows what to expect, and he actually enjoys it. So I know some people, when they look at some of the tools, they might think, oh, does it hurt them? It definitely does not hurt them. It makes them feel a lot better. It's
Not if you do it properly.
Yes, exactly. Other than that, I'm trying to think of something else that might be helpful for our viewers to watch.
You want to have me do a hind foot also, since it's a little bit different?
Sure, absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna come back around safely to the side. And I'm taking a look at your cart here. What do you have in your cart? What do you bring here?
This is a hoof gauge.
Okay.
It tells you what angle your hoof is at.
All right.
An angle of the hoof, technically speaking, the shoulder, the pastern, and the hoof, even though they're on separate planes, should all be at the same angle. Sometimes you can accomplish that with horses, sometimes you can't. That's where corrective farrier comes in.
Sure.
This is called a crease nail puller, where you can grab a hold of a nail head out of the bottom of a shoe and pull it.
Okay.
Obviously my hammer for driving nails. This is a clincher. When you're shoeing a horse and you drive nails through to hold the shoe on, you bend the nail over and you clinch it, so it crimps it, so the shoe stays on.
Sure.
This is a nail nipper, so when you're clinching, you bend the nail down, you nip it off so there's very little sticking out. This is a shoe puller. You can actually grab a hold of shoes and pull them off.
Okay.
And you already saw the nippers.
Yes.
And then these are my rasps. That's it's designed differently, but it's the same as any rasp.
Sure. All right. Very nice. Okay. You give your back a break?
No. You just come around this other side.
Okay.
And I always tell people, even though this is a very quiet horse and he knows exactly what I want, you can see he's already taken his weight off of it.
Sure.
When I come up to any horse, no matter how quiet, I always start and I put my hand on them so they know I'm here.
Okay.
I've seen too many people just reach down to grab a foot and startle the horse, and then the horse kicks because that's what they do. And so it's much better if you start and let them know you're here, and then just work your way down. You can see he picks his foot right up for me. And then I put their foot on this hoof stand because I'm getting old.
Oh,
and
you're
it's
not.
easier for me. A lot of people won't use these, but I do as much as I can. And it's, the parts of the hoof are the same. You have the frog, the sole, the hoof wall, but the design of the back foot is different. It's shaped differently than the front foot. And the reason for that is that horses typically will carry about 60% of their body weight on their front feet and about 40% of their body weight on their back feet.
Okay, and why is that? Why do you think?
That's just the way they're designed. I mean, think about it, they're all their lungs, their heart, most of their intestines are up towards the front of the body.
Sure.
So that's why they carry a lot more weight up there.
Okay.
So their legs are designed differently and their feet are also a different shape because they're meant to hold different amounts of weight.
All right. So typically, you know, when we before we have our participants ride, we definitely make sure that their feet are clean so that there aren't any rocks or foreign objects that are, you know, stuck in the hoof, because you don't really want a pebble bothering them. Right now, trying to think, do you see any signs of pebbles or anything that has created a bruise? That's good.
Nope.
That is good. So
And
it's
again, we take our knife, tear out the sole that we don't need there. So I'm trying to keep my arms out of the way best I can. It's hard though.
I know the video is probably hard for us to gauge, but Matt, how tall are you?
6'5".
6'5". So Matt is far flexible than I am. Far more.
I spend about 25 to 30 minutes stretching every morning.
All right. Well, if you hear that, everybody, there's some exercising for you. You see how nice his hoof looks already? And as you're doing this, if any of our participants are even wondering about how you get into this line of work, and you know, if they're interested in learning more, what would you tell them? Where is a good place to start?
If you truly want to learn to shoe horses, there are horse shoeing schools all over the country. Some are better than others. Some have a different purpose than others. They have shoeing schools that only last for a week or two, and those are geared more towards people who want to learn to trim their own horses.
Okay.
If you're going to go to a horse shoeing school to learn how to do this as a profession, most horseshoe schools are about 6 months.
Okay, all
Because
right.
they teach you not only the anatomy and the physiology of a horse,
Sure.
but they teach you how to work steel. There's a lot of things that go into, especially when you start getting into corrective farriery.
Sure.
Um,
So for our horses, we're pretty blessed that we don't have many horses that require shoes. Mac is just about the only one that we've had to have shoes on his front feet, and at some point, maybe when we put shoes back on his front feet, that would be a fun video for us to do again, so you could maybe see the blacksmith part of your job. But today we'll just kind of focus on the trimming. Same thing, he's gonna pick up that foot.
and this is pretty basically the same as the front foot. We're just cleaning the flares up, taking off the sharp edges. It's kind of, the easiest way to think about it is it's kind of like when your fingernails get too long and you snag them on something and they pull away, and they can, a horse's hoof can do the same. It can pull away really short and get them sore. So they're better off if we do all this, and then we can take off exactly as much as we want.
And believe it or not, Ember has a white foot.
Only seen April through September. The rest of the year they're brown.
I always love it when Matt comes because they look so fancy. And I always say, look at their fancy feet. Look at that fancy foot. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to Matt. And again, we will hopefully do another video sometime soon when he comes back to put shoes on Mac's feet. So anything else that you think we should know about what you do and how you serve our horses here?
No, I mean, it's nice coming here. All the horses are very well behaved. This job can be dangerous. I mean, it can be very dangerous. I've been hurt pretty bad a few times. So it's nice to come here when the worst thing that happens is the horses lay on me. They're very well behaved, and I enjoy coming here and working on them.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.